Hello and welcome to the video. This is for something a little bit different for those of you that have watched the channel for the last couple of years. But actually, if you've been with me from the very start, it won't be different at all. This is the Eachine E160, a little brushless, flybarless, stabilised helicopter that also comes with a radio. Now, I used to be into helicopters in a massive way, and I kind of fell out of love with helicopters just about the time that the multi-rotor thing was starting. So I still have some of my T-Rex 450, T-Rex 500, some of the little Horizon Hobby Blade things. I've still got those knocking around, and the multi-protocol radios are great for still flying those. But I was fascinated to get my hands on something like this. When I learned to fly, I learned on a Walkera Honeybee. For those of you that have been in the hobby long enough, you will recognise those kind of names. And learning to fly a helicopter was incredibly complicated because back then it was flybar, everything was manual, the stabilisation was kind of done by you, the pilot. Nothing on the actual model helped you at all. And then when the quadcopters came along, I tried a quadcopter and thought, this is amazing, this is so much easier. Now, the flybarless units, V-bar and K-bar and all those kind of things were kind of kicking about, but I left the hobby, this part of the hobby for helicopters when all that stuff was kicking around. I'd had to completely redo all the heads. Now this thing is absolutely gorgeous and I can't believe that this kind of stuff exists, but then I haven't been to helis for probably 7-8 years. So coming back to it now, it's really interesting. So if you're one of those pilots that maybe you've done the whole quadcopter thing and you look for something else to fly, or maybe you were a heli pilot back in the day, I know lots of us were, and interested what the state of the art looks like for these little, almost entry level now, I guess, helicopters, stick with it. I'm going to go through all of that. So while I unbox this thing, let me go through the specs. So this has a flying weight of about 156 grams with battery, so it's less than 250 grams if that's important to you. Flight time's about 5 minutes. It's going to take with the supplied charger the best part of an hour to charge the battery. It reckons remote control distance is 120 meters, but it talks about 200 meters in other places. So this is really a park flyer unless you want to put your own receiver in. As you can see here inside of the box, there are kind of 3 individual boxes. This is your charger, these are 2 of the batteries, and also a spare set of blades and a main gear. The main gear is plastic, the pinion on the brushless motor is metal. And I'm not too worried about the fact that some of these bits are plastic. Some of them do need to be sacrificial parts in the event of a problem. Little brushless tail motor, and I do like the way you even get gimbal protectors for this little radio. Now this radio isn't exactly fantastic. It needs 4 AA batteries, but it is set up and bound to the model. It'll give you dual rates, it'll give you control over the 3D or 6-axis stabilization. It has everything set up. And then we have the big event and the top piece, and just a cheap clamshell with extra battery actually in this one, so I got 3 batteries for mine. And there it is as it came out the packet. Now CNC motor head, 120 degree swash design, metal geared digital servos which seem to be pretty good, carbon fibre boom, and all the electronics are under the canopy. So a couple of close-ups here of all the different pieces. You can see how nicely finished and machined everything is. This is really nicely put together. You have the receiver and the 6-axis stabilizer at the front with the speed controls and stuff going to the back. The radio, let me go through this very quickly. Again, you've got to put 4 AA batteries in this to power it, so just be aware of that. Those aren't included in the kit. You're going to have to supply those yourself, and then when you power it on, it's pretty basic. You've got the switch here on the left for 6G and 3D mode, and then you've got a couple of extra things for things like the high and low gear ratios and also a throttle hold, which is going to be very handy. In fact, I'm going to use the throttle hold. Let me show you how that works. But if I power up the model, I've got the throttle hold switch turned on and actually put the throttle to the high and low position. You can see here how the swash plate is moving and affecting the pitch of the blades. This is on 6-axis mode, so this isn't going to be the full range of movement. But I just love the way that all these servos work in concert to give you all of the control of these kind of heads. It is mesmerizing seeing how all this stuff works, and it does appear to be very nicely set up straight out of the box with the blades tracking beautifully. So how does it fly? Well, I did have a very quick go at just spinning it up indoors. Back in the days, this is very similar to my very first Walkera helicopter that I learnt to fly on, and back in those days you had these trainer skids that had little ping pong balls at the end, and you used to scoot it around the floor. Very quickly as it started to spin up, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this outside, so let's go outside and try it a little bit better. In terms of the flying experience, it is very similar to a quadcopter in how stable it is in 6G mode. It is very forgiving. The way it hovers, the way it maintains the altitude, the way the radio setup is very nice. I would probably change the pitch settings a little bit. For non-3D mode, you tend to have a lot more positive pitch, so you can climb quickly than you have negative pitch. This has quite a bit of negative pitch, even in non-3D mode, but it is absolutely fantastic to fly. Not as noisy as I was expecting, super stable, and the tail is working very well. Even though it's got kind of a brushless motor out there, it's not belt or shaft driven or any of that goodness, but it actually is holding the tail very well, and the speed of rotation isn't bad either. On higher rates you get an awful lot more control authority, but in the lower rates, which is 80%, which is what I'm flying in now, this is absolutely beautiful. And this is genuinely the first time I've flown a helicopter in probably 7 or 8 years. And I'm not sure if you can hear it on the video, but my heart is absolutely pounding, and helis do this to you in a way that multirotors don't. So in summary, what do I think? Well, I am really blown away by how good this is. Now, Eachine, when it comes to quadcopters, always makes me pause for thought, but this is actually a cracking little helicopter. The quality is nice. I like all the little metal pieces. If you like lots of little intricate parts, then you're absolutely going to love flying helicopters. It does say to do the blades up in the manual before you fly. Mine could probably do with being a fraction stiffer, but in the old days you always had them so that they would just flop down. I like the way I was taught, but I'm guessing we're 8 years later now. The radio and batteries and everything kind of comes in the box, so you don't need to buy anything else. Available with and without the radio, so there is space on the little flight controller unit to plug in a Spectrum satellite receiver, or to plug in S-Bus, or I think even PPM. So if you wanted to add a separate little receiver and bind to that, then you absolutely could. And that's really interesting, because by default it comes ready to bind to Futaba radios, and potentially that would work with 4-in-1 multi-protocol modules. But I am really fascinated to play with this and set it up with OpenTX, but I'll come back to that in a minute. This is great to fly with if you are wanting to try helis for the first time. There is something about flying a heli, and I so forgot how fun it is when those blades start wearing and it starts making that noise. This is relatively quiet compared to the 450-500 class that I used to fly, but that noise as it kind of spins up still dumps a ton of adrenaline into my bloodstream in a way that multi-rotors never have. I wish I'd have had this to learn on. This would have been such a nice thing. In the 6-axis mode, it is incredibly forgiving to fly, and it auto-stabilizes. So if you get panicky, just take your fingers off the sticks and it'll self-stabilize as well, which is a really, really good feature. It's very, very forgiving. But if you put it into 3D mode, the head speed is going to go crazy. You're going to get the full pitch travel up and down. Then you can fly and do all those tips and tricks and TikToks and all those things that you see online. Personally, that's not the way I fly. So with the 6-axis stabilizer turned on, it's just absolutely lovely. It's helping me definitely get back into helis and get that confidence. Only a couple of things really to mention. First of all, the charger that comes in the kit isn't great. It takes a blooming long time to charge the batteries. I've been using one of my regular battery chargers on it. It's an XT30 style connector for the battery, so if you've got one that'll fit that, invest in a proper battery charger. You'll constantly be waiting for batteries to charge if you don't do it. The radio is okay, but it's only okay, and there's no detail in the manual for how you would set up a radio, something like OpenTX, to control it. And that, I think, is going to be the supplementary video. If any of you out there have actually set one of these up with OpenTX, I'd love for you to get in touch. I think I figured it out. I think the order is aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder, gain control for the different modes for the gyro, and then potentially a pitch setting as well. And I'm going to need at least 2 settings for rates, for either 80 or 100%, and I'm also going to need some curves for things like through idle up is what I would used to call it, 3D mode, or for regular 6-axis mode. That could be a fun thing to follow up, so if any of you have done it, do let me know. But if you buy it with a radio, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff because it's all there already. So if you have been thinking about getting back into helis, or maybe you have been looking at stuff like this and wondered how it all worked, I would absolutely give this one the thumbs up. This is a little cracker, and it's just reignited one of my lost loves of the hobby. Thank you for watching my video and watching right to the very end. If you want to find out what I'm currently working on, you can follow me on social media by searching for Painless360 in the usual places. If you'd like to become part of the inner circle, then you can become a Patreon. Details are in the description and you get lots of additional benefits. Check out the playlist section on the channel too. I organise all of my videos into playlists, and it's called something like Introduction to or for Beginners. All of the content is aimed so that you can start at the very beginning, and it teaches you that subject, starting with simple principles and moving up to teach you everything you need to know.